Hey everybody, welcome back to Joyful Homestead. You know, recently we did our very first ever viewer poll, and we asked the question, with spring planting starting soon, what would you be most interested to learn more about? And the overwhelming answer to that question, the most popular answer was, we'd like to learn more about whether to start your garden with baby plants, starts, or with seeds. And well, there's a lot of variables to the answer to that question. I'd love to get into them right now with you. Let's talk. I'm in the middle of my own spring planting right now, and I'd like to just share with you what I've been doing and my personal answer to the question of whether you start with baby plants or you start with seeds. And so I've got my bed here, and this actually is already planted, which is neat. I'm doing something different this year. Rather than planting in straight rows, I'm planting in beds where I have multiple biodiverse plants all growing up together. And this one I've marked here, I've got beets and turnips, and then I've got lettuce as kind of the spine of the bed, and I've got carrots, and I've got radishes over on this side. And what that should do is that should create an environment where the plants all work together. They're companion plants, and some of them are heavy feeders, while other ones will be nitrogen fixers. Some will be overshadowing others as they grow up and keep them moist, that sort of thing. So I'm really excited about that part of it. But you notice that there's no actual plants in this bed yet, they're all seeds. So the question that some ask, it's a very good question, is where do you layer in actual plants, starts, rather than doing it from seeds? First, let's talk about the pros and the cons of planting seeds. First and foremost, the biggest advantage of planting seeds is their cost effectiveness. And a pack of seeds, with this costs about $4, you get hundreds of seeds, potentially hundreds of plants. And if you buy just a plant, you'll pay dollars instead of cents for a plant. And that's the nice thing about seeds, is you can grow a lot of them in a bed. Another advantage to growing out of seeds is that when you plant seeds in the ground, in the soil that you have, only the fittest ones, the most suitable ones, are going to come up. And those are going to be the ones that are the strongest ones. So you don't necessarily waste any money planting plants that are weak and not suited for your soil. There are some disadvantages to planting from seeds, however. The first and the biggest one for me is the matter of time. As a gardener, time is my most valuable possession. I only have a finite growing season. And so any part of that growing season that I can either expand or I can skip totally is a good thing for me. So growing with seeds is something that uses sometimes an entire growing season. Our spring growing season here is about 90 days. Lettuce, for example, is about a 65 to 75 day growing season to maturity from planting. Now, if I were to plant with a plant that is already maybe 30 days old, then I know that I can go to maturity in 45 days, and I might be able to plant more lettuce or lettuce in the same bed over and over again. Whereas with the seed, I have to wait for that seed to mature all the way through that 75 days. The second disadvantage from growing from seeds is a bit of a small one, but something that you might want to consider, and that is the fact that seed packets sometimes don't get fully used. You might use half a seed packet or a quarter of a seed packet, and then forget about it, it gets lost, and then it gets wasted. I put mine in the fridge, and I try to remember to use the seed packets I've already opened, but there a lot of times you forget, and so some things can be wasted. But again, seed packets are rather inexpensive, and so probably not that big of an issue. There are advantages and disadvantages to planting from baby plants or starts. And one of the biggest advantages, I referenced it a little earlier, is the fact that this plant is already probably 30 days old. And because it's 30 days old, that means that's 30 days less of my growing season that I have to take and spend in order to let this grow. So very soon, I'll be able to actually harvest from this plant. The main disadvantage that I see growing from baby plants is the fact that these plants have been moved multiple times. They are in this pot and then they're in the ground. There is some trauma that's involved with that, and you don't know if a plant that's already used to a certain type of soil or a certain environment is going to do well in the new place. And so you do take a risk of investing in these plants and then finding that they don't work or that they suffer too much in your environment. Regardless of whether you're planting from baby plants or whether you're planting from seeds, a lot of the soil preparation is the same. For example, in my garden, I have wood chips. Now, I don't plant on my wood chips. You shouldn't plant on wood chips because that's not a growing medium. You want to plant in the soil. So, first thing I have to do to prep my soil is pull the wood chips from side to side in order to expose the bed or the row that I want to plant in. Now you get it down to the soil level and you take any weeds out of that would be present. One thing I do that some don't, and that's fine, is that I do amendments to my soil. I put a topsoil compost mix on top of it, about 2 to 3 inches deep, so that I can plant my seeds directly in that. However, when I plant with starts, I always dig down into the existing soil below that layer in order to have a nice solid compact base. Of course, just like always, you plant up to the base of the plant, to the top of the root ball. Another thing that I add that maybe you're not familiar with, but you should become familiar with it, is something called biochar. It's just basically charcoal. It's clean, pure carbon, and it helps the soil, helps the plants. It's very nutritious for them. You might want to look into that as well. So you're probably waiting for the answer to my question, which was, so seeds or starts? Well, my answer to that is both. I actually use a hybrid method where I leverage the advantages of starts by extending my season and having harvest throughout the growing season. And then at the same time, I'm able to plant seeds maybe around the starts in different rows in these patches here. And then I can have a later harvest as well. And those advantages for seeds also are in play. That's what I typically do. Sometimes I do beds that are all baby plants. Sometimes I do beds that are all seeds. And then sometimes I do beds that are a mixture of each. Now, I will say this is based on your comfort level. If you're a newer gardener, you may want to consider planting from starts. It might intimidate you to plant from seeds at the beginning, and it's easier to plant from starts as a beginner. There's no reason for you to feel like you have to be a hero gardener. Sometimes new gardeners think that they have to plant from seeds or they're not really being a true gardener, but that's not true. You can get a lot of satisfaction and joy from planting from starts. And one of the nice things about planting from starts is that you have a little bit more chance for success. And being a successful gardener from the beginning is really important. You wouldn't want to start gardening, become discouraged or disappointed because you have some losses, and then stop altogether. As you get a little bit more experienced in planting, you may then want to consider planting from seeds. And maybe you plant from starts and scatter in some seeds to practice. Maybe you even decide that you want to go in early February or something in the late winter and plant seeds in little cells in peat moss and start your plants that way. That's a lot of fun. Or just direct sow them. After a while, as you become more experienced, you find out what the plant needs and how to react to it, then you can start direct sowing in the garden as you become more experienced. Again, I actually use both methods because I like the idea of leveraging the entirety of the growing season a little bit more and extending it with mature plants. Well, everybody, that about wraps it up. I'm going to get back to my gardening. I hope that you've learned a lot today about the differences and the similarities between planting with seeds and planting with starts. I hope it's really been helpful for you. And if you like the content of our channel, please like this video, subscribe to it, look at some of the other things we've talked about. Happy planting.